Welcome to episode 247 of the Fabulously Keto podcast. And this week I'm joined by Jen Trepeck. Jen actually approached me and asked if she could come on the podcast, and I'm so glad she did. From the moment we started talking, I knew this would be a fascinating conversation. Jen shares her story of growing up as a skinny one in a family of dieters and how that led to years of yo-yo dieting before she finally discovered the nutrition education that changed everything. We talk about the link between food and mood and why so many of our challenges with willpower are actually biochemical, and how balance, not perfection, is what really matters for long-term health. Jen's down-to-earth approach makes healthy living simple and achievable. So here's Jen's bio. Jen Trepeck has been described as a force of nature in the wellness space. She's been recognized as one of Podcast Magazine's 40 Under 40, nominated for the 2022 International Women's Podcast Award for Visionary Leadership, and won Earworthy's first Independent Broadcast Award for Best Health Podcast and Best Independent Podcast in 2024. She's an optimal health coach, podcaster, and business consultant. Jen grew up the skinny one in a family of dieters, which was awesome until it went away, and she began her weight management saga. Ultimately, though, Jen learned the nutrition education we're all supposed to know, but no one ever taught us. This completely changed her life and allowed her to say she kicked her food issues. From then, Jen set out on a mission to pay it forward and help people help themselves. After a decade of working with clients, Jen started Salad with a Side of Fries podcast. Based on science, yet light-hearted, Jen talks about living life while still making ourselves and our health a priority. So let's go and hear from Jen. Welcome, Jen, to the Fabulously Keto podcast. It's fabulous to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
And we always start with, when I remember to do this, of course, we always start with, where in the world are you?
I am in New York City.
Ah, lovely. Fabulous.
Yeah.
I may be coming next year.
Oh, fun.
My sister said she wants to do that for her decade birthday. So you never know. We might be there.
Awesome.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your journey, how you came to change your diet and do what you do now, be a coach.
Yeah. So, my background is business and marketing, and I came to all this health and wellness stuff through my own saga. I feel like the word journey doesn't do it justice. I grew up a dancer. I sort of joke that I was the skinny one in a family of dieters because I didn't really have to focus on it. But I remember, there was always like growing up, we followed every fad diet in my house, right? So if it was, the fat-free food era, we had, Jenny Craig, we had Nutrisystem, right? Like I remember once coming home from school and like asking my dad if I could eat his like Nutrisystem food that was in the pantry because that's what was there, and it looked good. He was like, okay, I guess, But so I started to gain weight then between high school and college, like so many do. And I was like, okay, well, I know what to do, right? You follow the diet, and then you're probably going to, need another diet, right? And that's what happened. It was one diet after another. I sort of joke, there isn't a diet out there that I haven't done, my family hasn't done, or we don't know somebody who's done it. And it was interesting. I mean, I gained weight with South Beach. I probably had the most success in air quotes with Weight Watchers, but I also gained the weight back still following the exact same Weight Watchers plan, And so, I remember at times feeling like I would breathe and gain weight. And I was like, how is this possible? Like, what? This doesn't make any sense, But ultimately, let's see, I think it was like 2007. I learned about the curriculum that I've since based my entire practice on. And at first, I was like, no, 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 that's okay. I've got my thing, right? My thing was the wild roller coaster, but I didn't need whatever they had, you know? But I saw people who were following this approach. And one woman's story really stuck with me. She was sharing her story of removing like 150 pounds. And frankly, I didn't hear anything she said after that because I was having a conversation in my own head going, I don't understand. Like she's telling me the equivalent of another human was attached to her.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at her and I'm saying, I can't see where 10 pounds used to be. And I had this moment with myself that was like, Jennifer, they know something you don't know. Because based on everything you know, that doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
And so I worked with a coach. I followed the curriculum. It completely changed my life. Like the only thing that allowed me to say I'd kick my food issues. And then from there, I was like, everybody deserves this information. And why isn't this what we learned? And how did those things come to be? Right. So I was really like this insatiable student and trying to understand all of this stuff. And so I became a health coach on the side of my full-time job. So again, this was now like late 2007, before side hustles were a thing, before health coaching was a thing. And I built my health coaching practice on the side of my full-time job. And then July of 2019, left my full-time job, launched my podcast, Salad with a Side of Fries. And now the rest is history. 6 years later, I'm here sitting with you, Jackie, and sharing with your incredible community.
Yeah. So where did salad with a side of fries come from?
I mean, it is fundamentally like one of my go-to meals, but really it's about balance, right? It's having our health and enjoying our lives. That those two things are not mutually exclusive, and really understanding how to adapt our health plan to fit our lifestyle instead of trying to completely change our lives to be what we think is what we're supposed to do to be healthy.
Yeah. Especially what we've been told is healthy, which is quite
Right,
often not the same thing.
right, for sure.
So how much weight were you overweight at that time when you found this program?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in total, it was probably about 25 pounds all in, back then, 2007-ish, 2007, 2008, around there. It was about 25 pounds.
Yeah. So a decent amount.
Yeah. And
And
more than that, right? It's about the body fat percentage, right? Like I actually remind my clients all the time, this scale is the worst barometer
yeah.
of our health and of our progress. And so, really it's about that change in body fat percentage. It's about the improvement in our blood work. It's about the improvement in our energy and our sleep and all of the other things that actually matter in life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so what did you know, as well as the 25 pounds, what did you notice changed as you evolved your saga?
Yeah, I mean, it was everything I just said, right? Fundamentally, energy.
Yeah.
I don't really have caffeine or coffee, I should say. Like, I don't need it to start my day. Occasionally, I'll have some because, or something like, a matcha or whatever. But I'm not one of those, I need this thing to function in the morning.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes I'll use some caffeine as like a pre-workout, but I feel like that's different than when I worked full time and had my business on the side. And, there were people who were like, don't talk to me till I have my coffee.
Yeah.
I think the quality of sleep, the muscle mass, and then all of that translates into the blood work and balanced blood sugar and cognitive health and all of these things. I like my temperament also much more even keeled,
Yeah.
right? Like it's interesting if we're feeling very volatile, right? There's often a lot going on.
Yeah, that was one thing that I really noticed. You know, I've reduced 50 odd pounds, but the main thing I noticed was that temperament going from being hangry or angry to don't care really, whatever, go with it.
Yeah,
Makes a big difference. And
absolutely.
and losing that obsession with food. That's a big thing as well, isn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, when I think about the amount of mental space that used to be taken up by, now people call it food noise, but at the time it was just this mental chatter of like, what did I eat? What can I eat next? When am I eating next? And what am I allowed to have? Or should I have this? Or should I not have that? Or beating myself up over something that and I hear it all the time when people come to me, right? They're living in that internal dialogue that is so exhausting.
Absolutely.
It's funny. This was a few years ago. I had a client, Marilyn, and she said to me, so I work with people for 12 weeks, right? It's not sort of an endless, so for 12 weeks, we were probably around week 9 or 10. And she said, I think I'm bored. And so we were thinking through all these different ways. And she's like, no, I'm not bored of that. I'm not bored of that. Right. There was actually nothing that she needed or wanted to change up. She wasn't actually bored. It was just the first time that there wasn't drama
Mm,
around all of this,
yeah.
that there wasn't all of this other mental energy, taken up. And so it's just interesting because when we're so used to that, it's almost like we have this benchmark of what we're expecting. And we don't even know what that's like on the other side.
Yeah, you can't imagine it. You have no conception of what that is until you do it. But most of us have never been in that place, so we can't compare it. You know, you can think of a time when you were joyful and then think of a time when you were sad, and you know the difference. But for many of us, we've grown up with all this food stuff going on that we don't know what not having it is like.
Right. Right. For sure.
So what about your family? Did they follow in your footsteps?
So good question. So 2011, my sister got married. So my mom is one of my like poster child clients. 2011, my before my sister's wedding, I coached my entire family. And if you ever want a challenge as a coach, coach your family. But it was wonderful. We had a great experience with it. And so, you know, also over the years, as everybody has evolved and figured out little tweaks and things that work for them, we continue to sort of stay in these conversations together. And over the last couple years, I was doing a lot specifically with my dad around his blood work, specifically cholesterol blood work and blood sugar. So, his doctor for years kept saying, I think you should be on statins. I want to give you these statin drugs. And he would refuse them. And we really focused for about a year and got all of his numbers back into normal ranges.
So
And
do you
so
think,
his doctor, yeah,
I was going to say, do you think cholesterol or LDL cholesterol is an important marker?
it's a marker, right? I think we don't want to look at any blood test or the scale, right? Any measurement of any kind, we don't want to look at only one in isolation,
Mm,
right? So there's information there. And in combination with other tests and other blood work, it can give us a bit of a picture. And then, depending on what that number is, sometimes we want to do more tests so that we can understand, you know, okay, LDL is higher than we would ideally want it to be. Well, how much of that LDL is oxidized? What size are those LDL particles, right? So we start to ask more questions, and so we can get deeper into what that's actually telling us. But I think an individual blood test and one number out of a blood test is not necessarily helpful.
yeah, I agree. Because I might, if I was to go and have a blood test, I'm sure I haven't had one done for about a year, but I'm sure my LDL would be high and probably my total cholesterol, not high, but higher than they would like to see.
Well, then the
And
question too is like, well, what's the HDL? What's the ratio? What are our triglycerides? What's happening with blood sugar?
exactly.
Right?
So the
Yeah.
rest of it is fine, but they don't see that because I don't know about in America, but here they don't have that knowledge. There's a lot more doctors on the circuit now doing low carb and keto who understand this. But here, there's a few, but not many, and we don't have access to them unless you're very lucky and you live in an area where there is one. And so when I look at my blood results, I look at them and I think, I'm not worried. My HDL is fine. My triglycerides are fine. My HbA1c is fine. I'm not worried about one marker of LDL being higher. But they just look at that one marker and think, "Ugh," and they won't do any tests at particle sizes or anything like that. So, you just
Yeah. And you can request those additional tests, right? I mean, I do a lot with my clients and, with my podcast listeners talking about how do we sort of integrate all of this Western medicine with our wellness, right? And what do these things look like in combination? And you're right. I think a lot of our health professionals didn't learn this.
yeah,
So part of it is even just recognizing that, like, of course they don't know it. How, right? The expectation, just like many of us didn't know, right?
of
Like
course, yeah.
I grew up on the food pyramid, right? That's not based on nutrition or biology. That was based on economics,
Yeah.
right? So there are pieces to say, of course they don't know. I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to ask for additional testing. If they're not open to that, then it might be, that's okay. Can you do it anyway? There are also platforms. I know we have some platforms here in the US. I'm sure, there are probably even more of them around the world where you can request your own blood work
Yeah.
and go to a lab and,
Yeah, you can.
get some additional testing. And so, part of it's in how we ask, how we communicate it with our health professionals. And I think a big piece is to recognize that it's not an either or, right? It's a yes and.
Yeah.
So, especially with, they look at this one blood marker and say, hey, we think you should be on this medication because of this, blood test. And one of the things that I always recommend people say is, okay, I hear you. Are you willing to give me 12 weeks to address this nutritionally and lifestyle focus? I've yet to have a doctor say no.
Mm,
And so then we can look at it for 12 weeks and then also say to them, given the ratio or, these kinds of things, if what's your level of concern, right? Have you heard these things about statin drug, right? Like we can ask more questions and get into a dialogue with our healthcare providers. And I think, I do quite a bit of work in some wellness advocacy and, spaces and how we work with clients and patients and creating what we call, it's the healthcare alliance, right? It's the therapeutic alliance. It is all of us working together. So you, as the patient or the client, are as much an expert on the care team as the physician
yeah.
because you know your body,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
And you are the expert on your body. And so if your healthcare providers are not willing to see you as the expert on your body, right? Then we want to potentially find a new provider or share with them, I know for me, this is what I notice, right? And when we're communicating, actually, this is sort of a sidebar, but I think it's really important in this conversation. There are signs and there are symptoms. For a physician, those are two very different things. For us, as a patient or a layperson, they're the same. So if we can learn how to describe things to our providers so that we're to some degree speaking their language and they can understand where we're coming from,
Mm.
then it opens up a different kind of dialogue, right? So a sign is something that is measurable,
Okay.
which is why that LDL is so interesting to them, right? A sign versus a symptom, by the way, is not so measurable, much more subjective, right? I'm nauseous. I have a headache. Or, pain is often, right? A really difficult to measure symptom.
Yes.
So our trained healthcare, and I was going to say traditionally trained, but it's not right. Traditional medicine is actually like old Eastern,
Yeah.
Eastern
Chinese,
medicine,
yeah, Indian, yeah.
you know, but Western medicine trained healthcare providers see those things as very different. They don't operate as much from symptoms as they do from signs, right? Is there a fever? Is there a rash? Is it red, right? Like they're looking at signs. We're thinking about symptoms.
Yeah.
So if you have something going on or you're noticing something, the more data that you can pull together so that you can turn your symptom into a sign for them, the more beneficial the interaction with the healthcare provider is going to be. So if it's headaches or joint pain or, GI upset, right? I notice it happens this time, these days, this long, following these things, right? Like we're giving them data to turn a symptom into a sign.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just wondering how much they would then know what to do with that. You know,
Again, it
we
depends on the
we know our
provider.
body, but how does the doctor translate that into maybe a diagnosis?
Right. And it depends on what it is. It depends on the provider, right? But we're giving them more information to
Yeah.
be more helpful,
Yeah.
right? To ask different questions,
Also,
right?
yeah. And it also demonstrates that you are paying attention to yourself and you know yourself.
Yeah,
And that's a whole
exactly.
different approach to most people who probably just go in and say, "Oh, I've got this pain in my leg. Can you give me
Right.
something?"
Right. And for that matter, too, showing up to your doctor once a year for those annual things or that, annual blood work, right? That's actually early detection. That's not prevention,
Yeah.
right? Prevention is actually what we do every single day between those visits.
Yeah.
That's our preventive care.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
that's our job. That's our job. That's not their job.
Right. We expect that they know that stuff. They just don't,
Yeah.
right? It's not part of their education. It's just not what they were taught.
Yeah. Exactly. So, do you have a favorite type of condition that you like to help people with? Or do people tend to come to you with something specific in terms of, do you have a thing that people come to you with?
Yeah, so my typical client is weight management, blood sugar, cholesterol, right? Everything sort of ties into metabolic health, but those are the big things that drive people to say, I think I'd like to talk to you more.
Yeah.
Um, with that said, we're also going to end up talking about sleep, stress, energy, food sensitivities, all the other things that are connected. But the big things that bring somebody in the door are typically, the weight management piece, the blood sugar, maybe, their doctor said, hey, you're pre-diabetic or you're type 2 diabetic or, whatever. And then the heart health, the cholesterol piece.
Yeah. Excellent. And so tell us a little bit about what you're recommending to people in terms of eating, give us a little bit of background of how you're helping people.
Yeah. So we're focusing on a few pieces. One, on the nutrition side, it's low glycemic impact nutrition. So it's choosing foods and eating regularly to keep our blood sugar balanced. High protein, quality carbohydrate, quality fat. low glycemic impact. And depending on where somebody is in their life in relation to their goal, where they are, and different things, we tweak sort of what that ends up looking like. Pieces are very personalized at that. So that's the nutrition piece. On the movement front and, results piece, we're focused on body composition and removing fat, not just losing weight.
Yeah.
So we do talk about movement and building muscle and understanding body composition in that way. I'm not a personal trainer. I do, we talk a lot about it. I have resources, but we're going to help you find what works for you on the movement front.
Yeah.
So that we can build muscle, because muscle dictates metabolism.
Yes.
Oh, I guess I'll go back. So I'll give you a little phrase, if you will, on the nutrition side. So one of the things I teach everybody, if you listen to my podcast, you'll hear it often. It's protein and fiber at every meal makes your moving fat no big deal. Protein and fiber at every meal makes your moving fat no big deal. So protein is clean, lean protein. Fiber is vegetables and sometimes fruit. And then a meal is really any time we eat. The only difference between a meal or a snack is how much we have, and then therefore how long till we'll need to fuel again. And then, of course, the other thing that you need a couple times a day is some quality fat. And one day I'll figure out how to get the quality fat part into the cute little rhyming sentence. But for now, protein, fiber, quality fat. So then on the body composition piece, muscle dictates metabolism.
Yes.
Right? Removing fat, not just losing weight. The third component of everything we do is supplementation, and really strategic, personalized supplementation. Because what you need is different than what I need.
Absolutely.
Right? And, just given the quality of our food choices, what we have now, there are pieces of supplementation that are going to fill in the gaps where our nutrition falls short. And then there are pieces of supplementation that we can use to really help make this easier and not feel like we are white knuckling it through every day. And to help the body, I call it almost like rehab the metabolism, right? Because the same way that you can become insulin resistant, right? We know that to be diabetes.
Yeah.
You can become resistant to the hormones that tell us when we're hungry and when we're satisfied.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? And so it's not a coincidence, it's biochemical, that you feel like once you start eating, you can't stop. Or you feel like you're never hungry and then you see food and you're like, wait, I'm starving. Right? So those are some of the signs. And so we can use some really interesting herbs and botanicals and ingredients to help our body properly process foods, to help our body properly respond to some of these hormones and increase that sensitivity again. And then the fourth component, probably not in any particular order, the fourth piece is education and behavior modification. So this is not about a list of shoulds and shouldn'ts. This is about really understanding what our body does with food, how our body processes food. And so then food choices are coming from more of an intellectual place than an emotional place.
Yep.
And we feel empowered in those decisions, and we can notice in challenging situations and understand willpower, which is also very chemical. And we can understand what's happening and why we feel different ways when we eat different foods. And so that education piece is part of what allows this to not be another diet, right? And the behavior modification piece is really about understanding. It's like what we were saying in the very beginning of this is becoming just who I am now and what I do. I didn't completely unravel my life in order to be able to follow this plan that actually doesn't allow for holidays or birthdays or these kinds of things, where if I'm always feeling like I'm off on good, bad, right, then that's part of that mental chatter that we can do some work on so that we're really living our healthiest, best life in all the facets.
Yeah. And then you can have the salad and the fries.
Exactly.
Because that's not dictating, it's not dictating your choices. You choose. Right. You're choosing it rather than the food dictating to you what you're going to eat. So one of the things you said there about food affecting your mood, sort of, can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. So it's interesting. You mentioned earlier, feeling hangry, right? Or we mentioned, being short-tempered or cranky or volatile.
Yeah.
And one of the things, it's interesting, this also in my head, it also plays into this idea of like, where do we start, right? Do we start with this mental piece and our thoughts and got our head right, as they say? For those of you listening and not seeing, I air quotes around get your head right. Or do we start with the food piece,
Mm.
right? How does that work? And so one of the things that I always like to talk to people about is the connection between our food and our mood. That
Yeah.
it's not a coincidence when we have more patience. It's not a coincidence when we feel like, dropping a paperclip could really set us off, you
Yeah.
know? And when it comes to where we start, here's the interesting thing. So the vagus nerve is the literal connection between the gut and the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like to think of the vagus nerve as like a 5-lane highway.
Okay.
3 of those lanes go gut to brain. 2 lanes go brain to gut. So what that tells us is that we will never outthink the biochemistry of what we are putting in our bodies
Mm.
and what is happening in our gut.
Yeah.
So what that means too, right, is the quality of our nutrition choices are playing a lot into what's happening in our head. And I'm saying in our head because mood is very much connected to neurotransmitters, right? And we've all heard of neurotransmitters. I mean, there are some that are less familiar, but like dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, right? Like we know these words. So those are all neurotransmitters. And what research shows us is that our neurotransmitters can become imbalanced because of, frankly, everything in our modern lives. So
Yes.
what contributes to neurotransmitter imbalance? Ultra processed foods, right? Nutrition choices that are, calories, but not necessarily nutrient dense.
Yeah.
And, the phrase used to be, calorically dense and nutrient deficient.
Yeah.
But now there are so many things that aren't even calorically dense, but still are nutrient deficient, right? In all those processed foods. So, thinking about the quality of the food that we're getting, and we'll talk more about that in a second. Toxins. Okay, so toxins include the alcohol we drink, smoking cigarettes or vaping now, right? It also includes toxins in the air we breathe, our furniture off-gassing, right? The toxins in our home cleaning products or our personal care products. And toxins, the body has its own detoxification pathways. The body is designed to be able to weed this stuff out of our body,
Yes.
right? It's just that our modern lives are like a raging house fire, and our body's detoxification pathways are like a thimble of water,
Mm.
right? It's not equipped. It's not enough. So, because if you had a house fire and I gave you a thimble of water, you would say,
Yeah.
well, water doesn't put out fires,
Yeah.
right?
We're
So, yeah,
totally, we're in a total onslaught of toxins all around, all the time, constantly.
exactly.
And then
Exactly.
you
And
add to that the EMFs, the Wi-Fi, the blue light, everything is just a constant bombardment against our bodies. And it's no
exactly.
wonder it can't cope.
Exactly. And to that point, sensory overload also creates neurotransmitter imbalance. Well, what is sensory overload if not our modern lives? And I say this with a lot of compassion because I am also that person who is sitting there watching television with my phone in my hand, constant input,
Yeah.
you know? Um, by that token too, chronic stress disrupts our neurotransmitters. We know that we have a short fuse when we're really stressed,
Yes.
right? But it's also biochemical. It's not just, oh, I'm stressed, so, right? Bowel dysfunction also connects to neurotransmitter imbalance, right? So we know there are a lot of things that happen in the gut, like our immune system and serotonin production, and a lot of pieces to all of this stuff. All this stuff is happening in the gut. So what's your elimination looking like, right? What are the nutrients? Are we feeding a healthy microbiome? And then genetics also do play a factor. I don't want to downplay genetics. You know, it is real. And with that said, I don't know how much you've talked about this. There's a whole field of study called epigenetics.
Yes. Yeah.
So epigenetics is essentially the interplay between our lifestyle and our genes.
Yeah.
Nutrigenomics is the interplay between nutrition and genetics, right? And so essentially what we've seen over the last like 20 years of research is that what is more a determinant of what our lives look like now is our lifestyle playing the keys of the keyboard of our genetics, right? So we can actually, with our lifestyle choices, almost like turn up or turn down the volume on our genes.
Absolutely.
So you're not doomed, right? No matter
Yeah.
what your genes are, you're not doomed.
You either switch them on or you switch them off, but you can influence that.
Right. Another piece too, I think blood flow is incredibly powerful. Blood flow is critical for learning, for any sort of complex mental activity, for metabolizing is what they call it, the front of the brain. And that's where like our higher order thinking happens. That's where we have delayed gratification. That's where we can say, okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. When we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling stressed, when we're panicked, we're operating from the back of the brain,
Yeah.
right? And that's where we're kind of just, you know, when you can't figure out what to do next or what to do first,
Yeah.
right? That's more the back of the brain.
Yeah.
So blood flow helps with all of that. So what do we do with blood flow? First of all, antioxidants, minerals, and movement. You know, if you're sitting somewhere and you're like, I can't even concentrate, I don't know what's happening, could you do what I call 30-30-30? And whatever your level of mobility is, there's a version of 30-30-30 that can work. It's 3 different movements, 30 repetitions of each. So is it 30 push-ups, 30 crunches, 30 squats? Is it 30 arm circles, 30 leg lifts? You know, 30 side bends? 3 different moves, 30 of each. I tried a whole bunch of different variations of this. They all took less than 2 minutes. You don't get sweaty. You don't have to change your clothes, right? So you can do this at any point to just get some extra movement and get the blood flowing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you might find that you can think more clearly. You know, that you actually remember, retain the information that you started to look at after that.
Yeah.
You know?
And not only that, is it's going to help with the elimination of toxins, all those sorts of things. Then as you start to move your body, things start to shift. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you know, when we talk about neurotransmitters, right? One of the big things with neurotransmitters is amino acids. So amino acids, as I know you talk about, right, are the building blocks of protein. They're also the building blocks of tissue and the building blocks of neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
And so making sure that we are getting the combination of amino acids that's going to help us build all of the neurotransmitters. And so that's where If you're choosing to be more plant-based, you're going to have a greater commitment to understanding the different amino acids in different foods.
Yeah.
You know,
And making sure you get all the essential ones every day.
exactly.
Food combined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, newer research also shows like it doesn't even have to be at the same time. So they used to think, oh, you have to eat the rice and the beans together. Now what we see is that it doesn't have to be at the same meal, but we do need them in the same day.
Yeah.
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 Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to ask you, so this 30-30-30, would you tell people to do that in the moment of whatever's going on, or to structure that into their day at regular intervals, like more than once a day?
Both.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's the beauty of such a tool. Right. So I don't know, they say all the time now, sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah.
Right. And that's because it's the thing we're doing that we don't realize is slowly killing us. And it's because sitting all day is not human. Right. Well, controversial opinion. It's also not human to sit all day and go berserk for an hour. Right? The human body was meant to move regularly.
Yes, all the time.
So, exactly. So, regular bits of movement is much more human. So, could we do a 10-minute walk and a 30-30-30 a few times throughout the day? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I sort of joke when I am never more productive than the 2 minutes before the next Zoom meeting. Right? Like, when you have 2 minutes or 2 minutes before you have to leave the door and you're like, what can I do in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Right? This is what you can do in 2 minutes.
I love that. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you can do it anywhere, anytime. And like you say, it doesn't matter your level of fitness, because you just do something that you can do.
Yep. Exactly. Any level of mobility, you can figure something out. I did on my podcast, I have full-length episodes and then smaller ones called Nutrition Nuggets. So I have a nutrition nugget called 30-30-30 where I give a few different examples. And I tried all of them. All of them took less than 2 minutes.
Fabulous. Do you know what episode that is?
The nutrition nuggets are not labeled. They're all bonus, not numbered, right? They're all bonus episodes. But if you search nutrition nugget : 30-30-30, you'll find it.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Or send me a message. I'll send you a link.
I'll find the link and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
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 So going back to the neurotransmitters and improving your mood with food, is there certain foods that you think are more benefit? I get that it needs to be nutrient dense and ideally not mess up your blood sugar, but are there certain things that you recommend to people?
Yeah. So one of the things, right? So one of the markers, right? If we're going to look at even, trying to blend all this together between our choices and what we might see in blood work or things like that. So one of the interesting things is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF.
Yeah.
Okay. Decreased BDNF is connected to cognitive decline, anxiety and depression, and metabolic disorder. So one of the things that we want to do is increase BDNF, right?
Yep.
What can we do to that? Omega-3s. So not just eating protein or using a bunch of protein supplements, but specifically omega-3 quality fats. So sardines, anchovies, not everybody's favorite things, right? Salmon is more common, right? But the higher up on the food chain we get, the greater our risk of mercury poisoning or mercury contamination. So lower on the food chain is better, especially if we're going to be eating volume. So with the increase in omega-3s, we also want to make sure that we are not increase our omega-6s. So omega-6s and omega-3s need to exist in the body in a proper ratio. Yeah. That imbalanced ratio contributes to anxiety, depression, essentially
Inflammation as well.
impaired inflammation for sure, but impaired mood and mental health.
Yeah.
So what that means too, as we're increasing our omega-3s, maybe looking at some supplementation, it also means reducing those refined foods, right?
Yeah.
More of those actual food that come from the earth and eat things that came from the earth,
Yeah.
right? We want to avoid the farm raised fish. We want the wild caught fish. We want organic grass fed meat. So we're really being intentional about the quality of those food choices.
Mm.
Decreasing saturated fats is also important when it comes to BDNF. So again, looking at those processed foods, looking at the quality of the meat or things that you're choosing. With vegetables and some of these other foods, vitamin C is tremendous. B vitamins are powerful. So, of course, many of us know vitamin C, we're going to think about, right, all of those citrus foods. B vitamins, of course, are animal proteins, but also, right, lentils and beans, and then nuts and seeds, your dark leafy green vegetables. So spinach, kale, broccoli, avocado, banana, citrus fruits also have B vitamins. So B vitamins are critical for so many things in the body. Really, especially with energy also is what we really hear about B vitamins for most. B vitamins are also a lot for mood and memory. So like if you're like me, where sometimes you're like, where are my keys? Right? Or where's my phone and it's in my hand? Right?
Yes.
Or where are my sunglasses and they're on my head?
Yeah.
B vitamins. When we're stressed, our body eats up our B vitamins very quickly. So just like with the omega-3s and the amino acids, we might want to have a greater commitment to those B vitamins. And what's interesting about that is that a lot of people will say, oh, well, I'm taking B12 or something like that, right? So when it comes to supplementation, B vitamins, you want to think of them like a family, right? Like if you were throwing a party and you only invited one of the 5 siblings, it would be a problem.
Yes.
Right? Or 2 of the siblings, it would be drama, right? It's kind of the same. All of the B vitamins have to be there for them to work well. So one, we want a B complex rather than just a B12 or, B6 or whatever. We also want to make sure that they are the active or methylated form. So that gives you bioavailability so that your body can actually use them. So on the label, you want it to say like methylcobalamin, right? The methylated form. So bioavailability is the form. Bioactivity is its ability to do its job in the body, right? So that's the formulation of the B complex, right? What else is in there so that the B vitamins can do their thing? So anytime we're supplementing, we're thinking about bioavailability and bioactivity, right? So it makes the argument, I think, even with the omega-3s and stuff like that, to really look at and work with somebody who can help you choose those supplements to ensure that you're choosing something of quality. ALA, so is alpha lipoic acid. So this is another one. It's one of our really interesting nutrients. So think spinach, broccoli, tomatoes, Brussels sprouts, carrots, red meat, your organ meats, right? So we can get a lot of these nutrients from the foods that we're already eating.
Yes.
But I think it can make them more appealing when we recognize that they're doing so much more for us than this, what maybe motivated us to eat them in the beginning. Yeah.
So Jen, there was one thing I wanted to ask you because you spoke about what I call smash fish, the salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herrings.
Yes.
And then you touched on the toxicity from the sea. I have become really fearful of having fish. I do eat some, but hardly any because of that toxicity. Is there a, and I know wild caught would be better, but that's still in the sea, and the sea is still very quite toxic. What do you suggest on that? And would people be better supplementing?
So I'm a big fan of supplements for your omega-3s because of the volume that we need. And because, yes, to get that volume, like the amount that you would have to eat is where some of that toxicity can be more challenging.
Mm,
As I said, and it bears repeating, the higher up on the food chain, the more likely that is to be an issue. So your sardines and anchovies are going to have less. They're lower down on the food chain. They're spending less time in that, they're smaller fish. There's less time in that water versus like, you know, the larger fish that eat the smaller fish
yeah.
and then have all of that, toxins. But I also am a big fan of like, pick your battles, right? We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater or make perfection the enemy of progress,
Yeah.
right? Look at what are we eating now? Where can we realistically level up and start there?
Mm,
You know? So, and I don't know, I mean, somebody is more of an expert than I am in where around the world, we want fish from these waters or whatever. But part of it too is like how those foods are then processed into your supplement. So again, if you're looking at a supplement, you want that omega-3 to be made from those deep sea fish. You want to make sure that it's cold pressed, that it's not, the heat from their extraction process isn't damaging the
yeah.
omegas. So there's just, complexity that can become overwhelming. And I would say if you're getting to that place where it is overwhelming, pause, step back, keep it simple, right? What are all the other things that you're doing to help your body, with the toxic load that you have and like move on?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can get very overwhelming, and you can go down numerous rabbit holes into all sorts of things that maybe you're better off not going down. I know I'm
For
guilty of
sure, for
that.
sure.
So are there
Yeah.
any other major things that impact mood that we haven't spoken about?
So we talked about the movement. I think there's some other lifestyle pieces that are worth, stress and sleep,
Yes.
right? It's sort of my pet peeve with all of the personal development space when they say, and the entrepreneurship space when they say, sleep when you're dead, right? Or all of these things, or do more, right? Find more time in the day, wake up earlier, go to bed later. Sleep is so important. And you know it, right? You know that when you don't get enough sleep or you don't get quality sleep, you are crankier the next day,
Yes.
right? It
And
is not a coincidence.
craving more foods. Different food
Sure.
that you
So, well,
wouldn't
and part of
wouldn't
that is a function of leptin. So when we don't sleep well, we don't sleep enough. We are leptin resistant
hmm
the following day. Leptin is the hormone that tells us when we're done eating.
Yeah.
So it is not a coincidence, right, that you are craving higher glycemic, sugary, carby foods because that's giving us fast fuel to keep our energy. And then on top of it, we never feel satisfied because we're not responding to that leptin,
Mm.
right? So sleep is critical. And, sleep could be a whole episode onto itself, right? I have a handful of episodes on sleep for sure. But one of the things that I recommend to everybody is start to go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day.
Yeah.
And when you wake up, we want natural sunlight to our eyes. Ideally, it's first morning light, but when you wake up, right, natural sunlight to the eyes, that's actually setting our circadian rhythm for the whole body.
Yes.
People, when we talk about this, inevitably, and I don't know why, our human nature is to focus on what time we go to bed
hmm
because there's usually an alarm to tell us when to wake up,
Yes.
right? So we feel like our focus would be, what time we go to bed. Focus instead on figuring out that wake up time Start to wake up at the same time every day, and your bedtime will fall into place. So it makes it a lot easier. So for, waking up at the same time every day, first morning light, ending up going to bed at the same time every day as we get into that routine. So sleep is tremendous. And then the other piece is stress, right?
Yep.
So the movement helps with stress. Having things built into your day, and also, that you can use in the moment to help manage our physiological response to stress. Sometimes when we don't even realize it, our body is signaling that stress response, right? Your phone buzzing signals the same stress response as, caveman times, being chased by a saber-toothed tiger.
Yes.
Right?
And
because I can't help myself. Oh, yeah.
It's become so normal in our lives that we don't even recognize it as stress, even though it's stressing our body.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's sort of like our threshold of what we recognize just keeps getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can't help myself. Stress-inducing foods. Refined sugar.
Yes.
Table salt. Processed foods. Alcohol. Coffee.
Yeah.
And I know the coffee one hurts a lot of people, right? But it's actually exacerbating that stress response. So stress-reducing foods. Here we go again. Dark leafy green vegetables. Avocado, berries, tomatoes, nuts, right? Those amino acids, quality fats. Focusing minerals tremendously for that blood flow too. Focusing on nutrients helps us adapt and cope with everything that's coming at us.
Yeah.
We often think our mood is creating all of these other things. And I think what's coming out of all of this conversation is just to recognize that even our mood is biochemical.
Yeah. And we've both had that situation where we've changed what we're eating and our moods have changed. Our temperaments changed.
Absolutely.
Our anger has dissipated. A lot of that goes away when you change your food. I didn't do anything else. You didn't do anything else. You just changed what you were eating and it all changed.
Yeah. And movement too, right? We know those endorphins, right? It helps. It's real. Yeah.
Perfect. So, Jen, is there anything else that we haven't spoken about today that you really wanted to touch on?
I mean, we did a lot, at the risk of overwhelming. I think questions that I tend to get from this is, well, what about certain moods that make us eat? Right? That this idea of, emotional eating or cravings.
Yeah.
So one of the things there, I think we can talk about, so identifying a craving versus hunger.
Yeah.
Okay. So a craving tends to be very specific, right? It's going to be one food that we're looking for and not many other things sound good. Right? Hunger, a lot of things will foot the bill. Yeah. So think about like when you sit down at a restaurant and you're looking at the menu and you just can't decide. There are so many things, right? That's true hunger.
Yeah.
When we have, I need a cookie. Nope. Not ice cream, cookie.
Yeah.
Or, broccoli does not sound good. The only thing that sounds good is breads, pasta, baked goods, cookies, right? That tends to be either more of a, leptin resistance piece or a craving that's coming from somewhere. And so we can start to look at, well, if I'm not willing to eat broccoli, then I'm probably not truly physiologically hungry.
Yes.
Right? So one of the greatest questions, most powerful questions that you can ask yourself in that moment is, where am I not being fed?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I not being fed? Do I need a break? Do I need to walk around the block because I need some air and I got to clear my head? Do I need some quiet? Do I need some time to myself? Do I need to feel taken care of? Right? Where am I not being fed? I see it all the time where we can justify a break to eat. We can't or don't justify a break because we need a break.
Yeah.
So starting to look at what's a craving, what's true hunger, and exploring what might be driving us to eat. And having said that, despite what you might think, I don't think emotional eating is the be all end all. Like food, I mean, it is impossible to remove all emotion from food. Like there isn't a culture in the world that doesn't gather with food for celebration or grief or community, right? There is real value in having an emotional connection to food.
Right.
But it's about where that sits in the balance of the rest of our nutrition and the rest of our choices. And sometimes we can recognize and say, yep, I'm 100% eating my emotions in this moment, and that's what I got. Okay, great. Right? Our judgment of that, our attachment to that is where things get stickier. So if you find yourself, shame, blame, all of those things for the emotional eating, then we want to do some work around that. Work with somebody who can help you explore it and play with it and observe, right? Maybe we want to look at, speaking of things that we notice all the time when we start to, look at our nutrition. Usually within about 7 to 10 days, my clients say most of their cravings are gone.
Yeah.
And then they can notice when the cravings show up, what they're craving, why it's showing up. And we're having a very different conversation than we had, but when they first came to me and they're going, I have no control around food. I need all the sugar, all the bread, right? All of the
Processed foods.
yeah, and it's amazing what can happen and how clear some of the things that feel muddy right now can get, even in terms of what drives us to some of these emotional eating choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sort of what you do 80% of the time that makes the difference. You don't have to be perfect. I'm the first one to say I'm not perfect. I always tell my clients I'm not perfect. I don't expect them to be perfect. You need
Exactly.
to be doing the best you can, the most time you can. And then the times that you're not, recognize that you're choosing not to have something supportive to your diet or your health or your journey or your goal, and then let it go.
Yeah. And I think a big piece of that is choosing ahead of time, knowing in advance,
Yep.
making that the plan. What happens when we have that guilt or shame is because we didn't keep the commitment that we made to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so make the plan the plan.
Yep.
It's that disconnect that creates those other emotions and the beating up, when we beat ourselves up, rather than saying, this is what I'm doing and sticking to it. And this is what I'm doing can be enjoying the dessert at the holiday.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Jen, how can people contact you, get in contact with you, follow you, listen to your podcast, all those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So wherever you're listening now, Salad with a Side of Fries is the podcast. My website is asaladwithaside-of-fries.com. All social media, I am at Jen Trepeck, JenNTrepeck. Please send a message. I love hearing from you. It's my favorite thing. It might take me a minute to get back to you, but I promise I will. And on my website, you can book a complimentary curiosity call. So let's connect. Let's explore what's happening for you, how we can help you. And if I'm not the right fit, I'm happy to connect you to somebody who is.
Perfect. Fabulous. So we always finish with your 3 top tips.
So I think, let's see, I would start with recognizing that so much of what we think is about mood or willpower is actually biochemical, right? So we want to focus on eating for nutrition, the amino acids, the antioxidants, the vitamins and minerals, the quality fat. I'm making all of that one.
Yep.
Right.
I sort of took it as one.
Okay, good. I think number 2 is specifically as we're thinking about food and mood, recognize that nothing exists in isolation. So we could eat all of the nutrients, and if we're not sleeping, if we're not moving, if we're not managing our stress, right, we're not going to experience the benefits. All the pieces kind of have to be in play. It doesn't mean that we have to be at level 1,000 on all of them, but we want to be making progress in all of those categories so that we can see the benefit of it. And then I think the last piece is just to, take a step back, keep it simple, do what you can do. Don't sweat the small stuff. It doesn't have to be super complicated. If it's starting to feel enormously complicated, pause, right? It doesn't need to be complicated to help you be your healthiest, best self.
Yeah. Progress, not perfection.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Jen, thank you very much for being with me today.
Jackie, thank you so much for having me.
I really enjoyed that conversation with Jen. Her 30-30-30 tip is such a simple way to add more movement into your day. And it doesn't need to be complicated or take up much time. And it can make a real difference to how you feel. And I loved the question, where are you not being fed? It's such a powerful reminder to pause and check in with ourselves, not only about food, but about what we need emotionally, mentally, and physically. Jen's approach to health and well-being is practical, compassionate, and completely doable. And I hope it's inspired you to take a look at your own routine with fresh eyes. Don't forget, you can download the Ultimate Energy Boosting Breakfast Guide from my website to help you start your mornings feeling great. You'll find all the links and show notes for this episode at fabulouslyketo.com/podcast/247. Disclaimer. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Our guests, whether healthcare professionals or not, are sharing their personal opinions and experiences. This does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your medications, treatment, or lifestyle, particularly if you're on medication or have concerns about your health.